All right, so boom. It's official. Mike Tomlin is stepping down as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. 19 years at the helm, one Super Bowl championship, two appearances, four AFC title trips. But after 19 years, he's officially stepping down. Now, I will say this much. For one, thank you to Mike Tomlin over the years for the consistency, if you will, being there, a leader and a staple in the organization. But it is time for a change, and I think the Pittsburgh Steelers faithful, the organization, and also the fan base will say, hey, it was about that time. Now, I'm a little bit surprised that he did step down this season because he's tied with Chuck Noll with 193 regular season wins. So if he just plays one more year, knowing the Tomlin way and clinching that 9-win season to get that winning season, he would end up not only passing Chuck Noll, he would also break into the 200, all-time wins for a head coach, but he could always go and achieve that elsewhere. One way or another, yes, I do appreciate him, but it was indeed time for a change. And I know if you're not a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you'd probably sit there scratching your head like, how does a guy who's never had a losing season in 19 years, an organization that hasn't had a losing season in 21 years, feel comfortable with Mike Tomlin walking out the door? But if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you understand it's been Groundhog's Day damn near the last 15 years, and outside of 2016, or I should say 2015 and 2016, it's pretty much been the exact same season from 2018 up until now. Either you start out a little strong and then you fizzle out towards the end. You start out incredibly slow and then you build up a little bit of momentum and get shellacked in the postseason. 7 consecutive playoff games we have lost. And it didn't matter who the opponent was or where we were playing. We were down by 3 to 4 scores in every single one of those games. You would have thought President Lincoln was writing the Gettysburg Address when the Pittsburgh Steelers came to town at any point in the game, because it was 4 scores and it was 7 years ago that we were actually able to do something on the football field, at least in theory. Because remember, the Pittsburgh Steelers used to have a mystique about them. When you saw Pittsburgh on the schedule, you knew this is going to be a situation in which you may be battered and bruised. That's not the case anymore. People walk into Acrisure Stadium and they walk away with W's, and they might leave healthier than they did when they walked in. And furthermore, if you take into account the trajectory, or I should say the total career of Mike Tomlin, he came in and inherited a dynasty caliber squad. They had just won the Super Bowl 2 years prior. In 2007, we did okay, but we could have been so much better, and then we stunk up the joint in the game against Jacksonville. The following year, we take care of business and we get the championship, albeit people from the outside can say, well, Tom Brady was out, whatever the case was, because he tore his ACL at the start of the season. But one way or another, you knew the remainder of the season he wasn't going to be there. We took care of business. We got the championship. Since then, all we did was underachieve. Credit to Green Bay, they got the job done. But again, what happened in the postseason in that Super Bowl 45 matchup? We fell behind, 18 some points? Tried to rally and come back, but it wasn't enough. Tebow got us in the playoffs in 2011, one play in overtime to Demaryius Thomas, God rest his soul. And then from that point on, all we did was underachieve. 8-8 in 2012. We started, 0-4 in 2013. Then we needed a field goal to qualify for the postseason that I believe Kansas City ended up missing wide to the right. 2014 lost Le'Veon Bell at the end of the year because Reggie Nelson went into the knee. Ben Tate couldn't do anything for us out of the backfield. We get punched at home. I believe we were down by 15 against Baltimore. 2015, we ended up losing Le'Veon Bell after getting him back midway through the season. Then we go into the playoffs. We underachieved there as well. We got a lucky, break against Cincinnati, but Antonio Brown done took the CTE that changed the trajectory of not only his career, but his life. It only took a couple of years for that to mess around and get activated. Then in the following year afterwards, we get shellacked in the AFC Championship against the Patriots, where Chris Hogan goes for 180. And might I keep in mind here, the Patriots every single year shellacked us as well. And not kudos to Mike Tomlin, but a testament to Mike Tomlin's ability to coach this football team. How many times, and this for the Steelers fans, how many times have we lost to teams that are significantly sub 500 late in the year? I'll never forget a couple of years ago losing to Arizona and New England back to back when they were 2-10 football teams. We've lost to Cleveland 5 consecutive years in their stadium. Only one of those years they were actually competitive for all intents and purposes for the totality of that season. But all of a sudden, now albeit it's divisional football, but with Roethlisberger, what was he, 31 and like 3? Maybe like 30 and only lost 3 games against. Imagine going from seeing us actually crush our opponents when we're playing against a team that is significantly worse to feeling like you're on edge every single year, and that's what you're seeing.
So much pain!
And then post-2016, the streak began. 7 consecutive postseason losses. We play against Jacksonville. We're hosting a divisional game. They come on the road. Not only did they beat us in our stadium earlier in that season, they walked in and was giving us belt to ass. We were down by like, what was it, 21? Maybe even 28. I forget what it was. But we were getting smoked. Following years, missed the postseason. 2020, we start 11-0, incredibly fraudulent the entire time. Somehow, late game heroics put us in a position to where we're able to go and win games. We collapsed completely, losing 5 of our last 6, getting punched by the Browns in our stadium again. I think that was that last game in Heinz Field. I forget what it was, but we were down by like 28 before halftime. It was terrible. Year after that, Ben's last year, somehow we're able to scheme our way into that brand new 7th seed. Make it to the postseason. We play against Kansas City, play a very good first quarter. We down by 21, or I should say 28. I think it was like 35-7 or something like that. Again, getting punched. Play against Buffalo, same thing. Down by 3 scores. Baltimore last year, same thing. They almost ran for 300 yards on our heads. And then again, last night, we down, losing 23 points unanswered in the 4th quarter. Albeit, this isn't a full indictment on just the performance yesterday, because for the first 3 quarters, defensively, at least we're competitive, but you're watching the same thing. A collapse. You're watching lack of being able to take advantage. It's the same thing every single year. No matter who the personnel just so happens to be, you can swap anybody out and plug them in. You're seeing the same thing. Wide receiver production, running back production, defensive production, quarterback production. It's the same thing for half of this decade. The entire 2020s, the seasons have all been the same.
So much pain!
So for those who aren't within, the fan base of Pittsburgh, you may be scratching your head, but for the Pittsburgh Steelers fans, this was something that had to happen, and mutually, we can just go and part ways. Now, albeit, if you happen to be a fan of a squad that's never seen success, you can't resonate with the squad that appears to have success, saying that they hate where they are. But it's been the same thing. Tomlin loved to say the standard is the standard, but the standard has become mediocrity, and it's time for a change. Sometimes you got to take a step back in order to go and take a step forward. But if we continue to go and run the exact same course every single year, the result's going to be the same. The joke had been 9-8 all year. In fact, he's only gone 9-8 one time, right? He's been 8-8, I think maybe about 3, maybe 4 sometimes. But for the bulk share of time, the last few years, it's been 10-7. And considering, he was able to take old man Aaron to the playoffs. You had Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Devlin Hodges, Mitch Trubisky. You had Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and you still had a winning record. Don't you think when you consistently bring up he's been able to consistently have winning seasons with shit personnel, you're the head coach. You are employing the individuals who are supposed to go out and get personnel. So if you identify it as trash, don't you think it's a problem that he can't identify it as trash? This year, we had the most expensive defense in the NFL, underachieved. The years in which we had a good defense, They fold when it matters most. We're constantly underprepared in big games, albeit at the end of the year, you're plus 500, but the standard in Pittsburgh is championships. There was a period in time throughout the 2000s, the early 2010s, there was a big four in the AFC where it was New England, Indianapolis, ultimately Peyton Manning went to Denver, then it became Denver, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Every single year, you knew those four you would have to see them. Of course, there were different teams that would go break into the shuffle, but nonetheless, you knew these are the powerhouses you would have to go through. We haven't felt like that in a decade. In 2018, because 2017, 13-3, ultimately the Jesse James catch, it didn't go our way, whatever the case is, right? But moving forward from there, Le'Veon Bell sits out. Antonio Brown loses his mind late in the season. Tomlin was able to somewhat mitigate that or hold it down to where people didn't know exactly what was going on. And you look at it like, oh, wow, the coach is able to keep the lid on a bunch of different things. But post that, Roethlisberger's elbow goes. Able to at least put together a good coaching job to make up with losing your starting quarterback. From 2020 up until now, it's the same thing. We just get W's by the skin of our teeth. That's it. That's it. We luck our way through. The football gods give us a blessing, but we've never actually felt competitive. Every single year since 2020, or I really should say since 2019, truly, but every single year of this decade, we haven't been competitive.
So much pain!
That falls on Tomlin. Keep in mind, our offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, completely underperform. And take a look around the league. There's a changing of the guard. Offense is the new name of the game, albeit there are some defensive coaches that are finding success here and there. But when was the last time that you see us trying to poach somebody from somewhere, or maybe going to try to make a move to get a box office star to come out to Pittsburgh, whether it be a coach or a player? We're not making those moves because we're still archaic in how we're making, moves around the personnel across the organization. Tomlin notoriously, or I should say the organization, doesn't fire coaches. It took an act of God to get Matt Canada the hell up out of here. We saw the exact same offense under coordinate, for whether it was Canada, whether it was Fichtner, whether it was Haley, whether it's now with Smith. It was the exact same offense. Defensively, whether it's Terrell Austin, Keith Butler, since Dick LeBeau's retirement, our defense has notoriously been bend, don't break, and depend heavily on splash plays. It's the same thing. And you can't expect to win seeing the same thing. And again, it doesn't matter if we end the year plus 500 with a winning record. The standard is supposed to be Lombardies. And obviously, you only have two teams that has 6 championships. You have a few teams that have more than 4 or 4 and more. Still, you gotta be competitive. And when was the last time that you looked at Pittsburgh and said, man, they can make a deep playoff run? It hasn't happened.
So much pain!
And I know there's going to be some people who's going to say, well, you're going to regret this when you find yourself there at the bottom of the league. No, we're prepared to see that happen in the hopes that we can get a coach who can turn the franchise around. Because when Chuck Noll came to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh was the worst team in league history, if I'm not mistaken. Because from 33 to 69, they were god-awful. Chuck Noll came in, took a couple of seasons, turned it into a dynasty. After a decade plus of just through the 80s, here came Bill Cowher. In the 90s, Pittsburgh was incredibly competitive. Choked in AFC championships. Early 2000, choked in AFC championships. Spygate happened, but finally was able to go get the championship. Early tenure of Tomlin, very competitive. Last 8 years, not so much. So with that being the reality of our situation, it is indeed time for a change. And I wish him the future in his endeavors. I'll always cheer for him. He go elsewhere outside the division, I'll wish him the best. He get to the 200 wins, I'll be the first person to sit there and give him a round of applause. But as far as I'm concerned, it's time for a changing of the guard. And this is good for us because we're tired of dealing with the exact same thing. It's unfortunate that potentially this is Cam Hayward's final game and he balled out post, turning 28 up until now. He's had a magnificent career and it's a shame we haven't been able to go and get him a championship. But overall, it's going to be a legacy of underachieving despite the fact that he's been able to win 193 and tie for the most victories in franchise history. Because still, despite all the success on paper, there's so much that was left on the table. So I would hope for whoever the next coach just so happens to be, they're able to ignite the essence and the aura of what the Pittsburgh Steelers used to be to bring us forward. And it's not to say that Tomlin's just not capable and that's why it didn't happen. It just wasn't that anymore. So I wish you the best, and it's time for a change. Mike Tomlin has officially stepped down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The changing of the guard. The changing of the guard. I'm just hoping that in the future, things get better. But history has shown us that's been the case. But history could just be history.
Hey, I appreciate you watching the entire video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button on the way out if you haven't already. And on top of that, hit that notification bell as well. For whatever reason, YouTube's only showing my videos to 20% of my subscribers. So if you have already turned on the notification bell, turn it off, turn it back on. If you never turn it on, turn it on. I appreciate you.